So small and slow solutions, they don't require a lot of energy. There are a lot of examples in nature, and here's one of them. And this is one of the ways that we, as permaculturists, will increase the fertility in your soil. It boggles my imagination why this isn't used more often. You've probably heard of cover crops, leguminous crops, particularly. They have a relationship with a bacteria. It's called rhizobia. And what it does is it takes atmospheric nitrogen out of the air and fixes it on the nodules on the plant's roots in exchange for sugars. Well, if this is a cover crop situation, so say that's clover. And we come through and we cut that clover. Well, when we do that, on the surface there is a die-off beneath of roots that's associated with killing the top. Those roots die off, and all that nitrogen is now bioavailable to anything growing in the vicinity in the soil. So effectively, we're adding nitrogen to the soil by using a plant. It does it for free. That's not a slow, that's not a slow way to go about it. I don't know, a slow and simple, I think that's just an amazing way. I do this. I use hairy vetch and clover, and I also use rye grain as a dynamic nutrient accumulator to boost just the minerals and content of the soil as well as the nitrogen for things growing around it. Also, it's good at keeping Bermuda grass at bay, believe it or not. I've done a lot with Bermuda grass. As a matter of fact, Lynn, that's basically, she hired me initially because, well, and I've got pictures of this, but she's got a really horrible slope in her backyard, and I guess her son he flipped the lawnmower once and it was getting pretty dangerous. So she was looking for, we happened to run each other. I was pumping gas at Ingles. She saw my truck, the symbol, my business symbol, and she thought to herself that I must not be doing something conventional with a name like Ancient Earth Landscaping. So we started talking, and then that worked itself into a consultation, and then more consultations, and so anyway, it all started because of Bermuda grass. So using biodiversity, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversity is usually when you think in ecological terms, the more diverse, the more healthy. That's not always true, but for the most part, the more diversity you have, the more health you have in an ecosystem. And you can also talk about this though, in what you're looking at there to the left is every year I grow peppers. I'm a pepperhead, and I make fermented hot sauce. And so that's what that is a fermented hot sauce, and that's oil that I'm capping each of those jars with, and that helps keep some of the microbes that might show up that can make you sick. Fermentation's kind of, you got to be pretty cavalier. I've ate some things that probably shouldn't have, but I'm still here. So, the plate on the right, that's some sauerkraut that we made. It's purple because we use purple cabbage and carrots. So we do a lot of fermentation, kimchi's, sauerkrauts, yogurt. I've made yogurt. I haven't tried my hand at cheese yet. That's me and my best friend Joey. Those are some peppers. Those are ají amarillo crystals peppers, and then garlic. It's one of them. I'm not going to tell you all the ingredients of my hot sauce. I will tell you it's $20 a quart. If you want to buy some, you're not going to find it anywhere else. You can't buy fermented hot sauce. It's just Tabasco ferments theirs, but what you buy is no longer fermenting. And with fermentation, it's magic. It really is alchemy. It's magic. You're using local microorganisms in your kitchen to make your food. It doesn't get you more local than the microorganisms in your kitchen that you're eating. And you may not know those microorganisms are the lactobacilli. They're responsible for what the term you have heard, probiotics. People pay a lot of money for probiotics. Ferment, you get all the probiotics you need. My hot sauce has probiotics in it. I haven't had it tested, but I'm pretty sure it does because it's got lactobacilli, and that's what probiotics are. So you can spend $60 on a bottle of pills and just make some sauerkraut. It's a very simple process. Anyone can do it. I mean, it's not hard to do. It just requires simple sauerkraut, it's cabbage, and salt. That's it. It has to be no anti-caking agent, so it needs to be sea salt or some other mineral salt. So anyway, this is another interesting fermentation. Would any of y'all drink that? No? That's kombucha.
What is that slime?
Have you seen, I'll tell you. Has anyone seen kombucha at a grocery store? They sell it at Ingles.
I've made it.
You've been, okay, awesome. So you got the SCOBY then?
I gave up on it.
You did. This is another one where, you know, you gotta be cavalier. Another name for this is mushroom tea. That, what you're looking at, that organism-like looking thing, which I'll show you this too a little later. This is actually bamboo. But don't let me get sidetracked. SCOBY. This is a SCOBY. It stands for a symbiotic colony of yeast and bacteria. So that is yeast and bacteria. And it's in tea. You make black tea, put the SCOBY in it, put some sugar in it, I believe, and it's slightly alcoholic. It's like 1% because of the yeast, but it's, you know, your kids can drink it. It's not going to get you drunk. And there's supposedly, it's very tasty, I think anyway. But this is another fermented product that we do, among other things. This is also, my wife made this bread. This is another fermented product. Very easy. This is a no-knead recipe that, you know, she puts the flour and the water and the yeast and the salt in a bowl and uses a wooden spoon and stirs it up. Let it sit for a couple of days and then you bake it. It's delicious bread. And it makes your house smell so good when it's cooked. Does anyone know who this gentleman on the left is? You don't get anything to do. I'm just curious. Who someone said that?
The Edge.
The Edge, yeah. That's my favorite band is U2, and that's the lead guitarist. So this principle is use edges and value the marginal. That was my attempt at a joke. So this is one of my favorite principles. And so don't think you are on the right track just because it's a well-beaten path. I think that's pretty important. What we're looking at there is a cross-section of soil. And the reason I put that there was because I wanted to talk about that being an edge. The edge between the non-living mineral realm and the terrestrial realm above it. If it's healthy, there are billions of different organisms living in this world that we walk upon. A whole other universe of beings that create health in that soil for plants. And that's an edge. That's one way of looking at it and thinking about an edge between non-mineral, non-living, and terrestrial living on Earth above. In between is this edge that supports us. Another way to look at edges is a concept called an ecotone. This is where two different ecosystems come together. So you can see the land ecosystem and the aquatic ecosystem, and then they create this transitional ecosystem in between them where both the species from both different ecosystems can commingle. And then there are other species that exist just in those particular niches. And that creates a lot of diversity, a lot of health. That's one of the things we attempt to mimic. We use edges a lot in permaculture for this very reason, to create more diversity. So you can, if you remember the original was use edges and value the marginal. Well, you can think of the marginal as the end of the screen as the margin of the screen, but you can also think of it as marginal and the less desirable, like a weed, for instance. That's something on the edge that's marginal. Top left there is comfrey, which is a plant we use in permaculture a lot. It's a dynamic nutrient accumulator, and it's also a mulch plant. So it mines the subsoil for nutrients and brings it up into its flesh. And then we do a technique called chop and drop. You chop the comfrey, and comfrey grows fast. Most people, if you know, you buy things as weed, because in a conventional gardening sense, I guess it is a weed. It can take over too if you let it. But it also creates very healthy soil by doing the chop and drop method. It's also medicinal, it's edible. Bamboo, that's another plant that's seen as marginal, and now I'm talking about marginal plants that really are not marginal. Bamboo is the most useful plant on our planet to our species. The problem in this country is we don't have the culture for it. That's the reason why it's mainly, and not understanding it, yes, it will take over your garden. It will. If you plant it and don't, and then do nothing else, it will take over. The only thing that stops it is running out of sunlight. It'll cross roadbeds. I've seen it send rhizomes 7 feet. You might know of Foster's Nursery, actually. They have 2 different bamboos growing there. It's Buddha Belly, or Philostachy aureus, and Pseudosausage japonica, or arrow bamboo. I fell in love with bamboo there. I actually did field divisions from their bamboo and brought it to my house, and I have since sold some of that I've propagated at my house. I'll be talking a little bit more about bamboo as we go, but it's over 1,400 uses, which I know that's kind of, you know. The bottom left plant there is sorrel. That's my favorite wild edible. Just from a conventional landscaping perspective, I see sorrel growing in just about every lawn. I mean, unless you're putting effort into eradicating the rurals that show up in your lawn. And this is a very tasty plant. It tastes lemony. It's actually very good for you. You can eat it, so long as you know it hasn't been sprayed with any poisons. And then to the right is plantain, which is another plant that's edible, medicinal. My wife suffers from pretty severe eczema from time to time, dyshydrotic eczema, and plantain's been used for a long time for medicine, for humans. We'll make a poultice with this. It's also good if you get stung by a bee, it can pull the stinging sensation out. But we've used it with pretty good effect on my wife's eczema. Just make a poultice of it, put it on the affected area. But this is a weed, but it's also a plant that can bring fertility to your garden. And it's a plant that's medicine. It's a plant that's useful to us. It's just a matter of perspective. So, and this is the perfect case for a weed that's not a weed. It's the dandelion. My partner in my last business would sow dandelion in his beds because it is a dynamic nutrient accumulator. And every part of that plant is edible. The roots, the leaves, the stems, the flowers, even the seed heads. And I've ate all parts of it just because, that way I can stand here and tell you, you can eat it. I've made a tea with the roots. It tastes kind of like asparagus. And look at all that you get by eating it. Just eating it. It's higher in beta-carotene in carrots, iron and calcium in spinach. Look at all the B complex that's there. CEP, I don't even know what P is. I've never even seen that as a vitamin before, but it was listed in the book that I referenced this from. And then biotin, inositol, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, zinc. And again, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, and zinc all have uses in the garden. Those are minerals that your plants need. You can make a fermented beverage with the flour, dandelion wine, which I've never done, but I imagine I will. The greens are really good in salads. You can saute them. For a plant that we've spent so much poison and money and time and energy eradicating, when it's this good for us and that good for the ecology of our soil, it blows my mind. But that's the convention. So, I'm not holier than thou. I'm not trying to point the finger or whatever. I've got the biggest backpack blower the Husqvarna makes. So, I'm using petroleum just as much as the next. This is Haiku Bamboo Nursery, part of it. You're seeing a couple varieties of bamboo here. This is arrow bamboo, Pseudosausage japonica. The Japanese use that to make arrows with because there's no sulcus and it's perfectly round and straight, and it makes perfect arrow shafts. So it's used. You can make all kinds of other things with it as well. But that's just one of the uses. The one next to that in the back there, that's Macunoid. And then another one, which may be some interest, the bushy-like ones growing here, that's Dracocephala, Fargasia Dracocephala.